What's so neat about books is they make an imprint on you when you're younger, and it can remain a memory for your whole life of something that you found so magical, like a flying horse. What's a flying horse? I need to see a flying horse. And and I love how you weave all of these facts about the Olympic equestrian and these real people in there for children.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 6 of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future-ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and I serve as the Future Ready Librarian spokesperson. I have the pleasure of working within my library and school community and also with others around the country and world through Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I am honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. Today, I am so excited. We're in for a treat because this one is a little different than having all the amazing librarians that we have had on the podcast, because my friend Dana, who you'll meet in a minute, reached out to me, and I had seen on her Twitter talking about a barn Book Nook. So after we connected, we thought it would be a really great topic and just so inspiring for all of us that are in libraries and in schools and working with kids to hear this story from Dana and Carrie and Sarah. And so I'm so happy to have you all on the show today. And let's just kick it off by having everyone introduce themselves.
My name is Dana Plautz, and I'm the co-creator of a children's literacy website called mrsp.com that we started in 2008 to just spread the joy of books and the love of reading, and to spark the creativity in children. And it's free for all librarians and teachers and parents out there.
And Carrie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Carrie Seim. I am the author of Horse Girl, which is a middle grade novel that's a bit like Mean Girls meets Black Beauty. And I'm also the author of the Flying Flamingo Sisters, which is an Audible adventure series. I also work as a journalist, and I do a little TV writing. So I do all kinds of writing, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Maslin. I'm a staff reporter for the New York Times. What I do for my day job is, very tough, covering investigative subjects, for which I was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, as well as crime and sometimes delight. But my secret side hustle is ponies. Utterly obsessed with horses. In 2021, I was the author of Horse Crazy, the story of a woman and a world in love with an animal, which is a nonfiction book about obsession with horses all around the world. And about 2 weeks ago, my second book, The Flying Horse, came out. It's book one in the Once Upon a Horse series, which is true equestrian tales for middle grade readers.
Amazing. I'm just so excited now, not only to talk to you, but also to read these books. So I think it's just so great. I mean, who doesn't love horses, right? Especially our readers. I think that it's a topic that every reader, like I was saying earlier, my daughter, she just loved horses so much. And I see that a lot in our library. And so I'm excited to not only share this with the librarians today, but also to bring it back to my school too.
Well, I think I think Dana took it to the next level, sharing that love. I was just about to launch into what she did, which is really incredible, and how she brought us all together.
Yes, I can't wait to hear. So go ahead and tell us that.
Well, it actually kind of started during the pandemic for me, because I used to be a big swimmer and I couldn't go to the gym anymore. And so I created this tiny book club. Well, my friend actually came up with the idea in just the two of us to start reading books. And we read Sarah's book called Horse Crazy. And it got me thinking, oh my gosh, why don't I go horseback riding again? Because I had a horse for most of my life. And then with family and career and everything, I just couldn't get to the barn every day, so I gave it up. And this book, I thought, I'm going to do this. So it got me to go and start writing again. And I saw her post on Twitter, and that's what's so great about social media. With my literacy site with Mrs. P, I'm always trying to connect with librarians and authors. And so through Sarah's tweets about her book, I saw Carrie on Twitter and her new book, and I bought it also and read it, because you are never too old to read children's books, tween books, any kind of books. They're all great. And I started seeing photos of them like doing events at barns. And so where I was writing, there were lots of little kids, and I am a more senior writer, being in my 60s. And I thought, books are something that connect us all. And what if I had given my copy of Horse Girl to some very cute little kids at the barn, and they wrote me this thank you note that it was just adorable. They drew little photos of I'm showing this little picture they drew of me with my horse and telling me how much they love books and horses. And I thought, you know what? I am going to make a little book nook at the barn. And I asked Elaine, the trainer at our barn, how do you feel about that? And all the conversations, between me and the little ones, the little kiddos, would always happen right outside the tack room. So I thought, all I really need to do is have a sign and gather up my favorite books, which of course were Sarah's and Carrie's and some other authors, like Elizabeth Letts, who has some great books she's also had made in for kind of kids versions, and some how-to books. And we didn't want to have to police it in any way, so we just made some little imprints of to put inside some book plates that said borrow, read, return, or love, read, return. And so we put them in there, and the parents were just thrilled because they always come to watch their little ones. And then the owner of the barn, she was like, wow, the parents really like this. She started advertising it on her barn website that they have a book nook. It's like right after the picture of the horse program, there's the book nook, because it's such a great way for kids to learn and read. And it's a great way to connect as an adult. And it's really, when you share a love of the same book, that's the thing that can help start a conversation with someone new, and it can lead to new friendship. And, books they're really the things that they span all generations for us. And so that's kind of how I came up with the idea of the Book Nook. And I hope to expand it to some other barns that have therapy animals, because I've been so inspired by watching Sarah do events also with therapy animals, and reading books to animals is really great for kids too.
I want to commend you, Dana, too, because you've gone further than that. You even did a book club on horseback, and every kid was riding their horse, holding a copy of my book. And what a better way to get a reluctant reader engaged with the subject. And I think what you're doing is so special. And the intergenerationality, did I make that word up? Let's go with it. Of what you do, you're in your 60s, and here you are sharing books and borrowing books and sharing a language with children. It's really inspiring that you've created community through books in this corner of your barn. And I commend you on that.
Oh, thank you so much. And I want to share to tell you and Carrie that the books, there is one little girl who she said, I'm not a big reader. And she goes, is it okay if I take a book out? And I said, oh, of course. And, why don't you and her grandparents come? And I said, you could have your grandparents read with you. And so the next week, she actually wrote a book and she did little illustrations, and she put it in there and wanted to share the story of her little book, because we always get together before we start writing. And so, it's really like, I just can't thank you both enough for getting me back into loving horses and doing this, because there are just so many connections to be made. So I'm carrying you to the barn every time I go, just so you know.
Oh, Tina, that's so magical. That's just incredible. And I have to say, I have heard from so many parents and librarians and teachers that horse books are really connect with reluctant readers, as you were saying. There's something that gives them permission to read because it's something that they love and it seems like a joy versus a chore. And I think one thing I've thought about a lot since writing Horse Girl, and I'm sure Sarah has the same feelings, is that horses, especially for this middle grade age, are a great connection between your childhood and adulthood. So horses represent, the independence and the freedom and strength, but they're also the comforts of childhood. They're very comforting, soothing creatures. So you get to sort of bounce between those two worlds when you read about them. And I found that that's just a really, really neat thing. And then as adults, we get to do the same thing with our stories, which is going back to some of our favorite memories of childhood, whether it was the first book or the first real horse, and living in that world, even as a grown-up.
And I couldn't agree more. Your book, Carrie, with how finding your herd and finding your people at the barn, and Sarah, both your books about feeling like a bit like an outsider and having that barn and the horses be your refuge. I think so many kids, that's so true. The barn is this place where they have something that when you're riding a 1,200 pound animal or even a 900 pound pony, it gives you a confidence. And I was one of those kids. I was super tall. I was taller in the first grade than the teacher. And I always was teased and was, never felt confident. And the horses, I started riding when I was really young. And that was something outside of my school activities that I could feel great about. And I think, that's where both your books also impart those wonderful stories for kids about that you can feel empowered and you can overcome obstacles. And, something like a horse or, any kind of activity that they have that's outside of school is really wonderful for them. But that's what I especially loved about both of your books.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's so neat too, just to talk to people when you're really interested in a topic and so passionate about it. And that's when we talk to authors or illustrators, like at our school, to hear like the why behind, writing about horses or writing about a certain topic. And so that was one thing that I found really interesting, is that you guys have this connection, and now you've inspired Dana also, but will inspire a lot of kids. And one thing that I wondered too, I know that when my daughter was young and taking care of her horse and loved reading horse books, she always loved finding like little nuggets of, like true things, like true facts too, on how to take care of them. And that's a really neat connection, having these books like in a barn and around kids that are around horses. And so do your books also incorporate these educational like facts and things too for kids?
Yeah, what's so cool about Carrie's book is it actually has footnotes all throughout. That Horse Girl has footnotes that tell you, oh, this is a frog, this is what a hand is, in terms of measurement. Yours is very specific with that. And I'm going to out you, Carrie, is that Carrie wasn't a horse girl. She taught herself all of this. Her sister is the horse girl. So that speaks to Carrie's success as a reporter to really report out this world. And you can elaborate on you some more.
Yeah, no, we incorporated, we call them hoof notes, of course, instead of footnotes, but that was important to me because I was coming at it as a person who loved horses more from afar. While my sister was the rider, And I would go and watch her ride and watch her lessons, but I was allergic, so I wasn't really up on the horses very often. And so I wanted the book to be accessible to both kinds of readers. Those who were really deep in it and would know all the terminology, and those who were more, civilians who just liked horses from afar. And that's the beauty of books, right? You can both. If you're riding every day, this is going to be a thrill. Sarah's book is going to be a thrill for you. And if you haven't, you're going to learn something and still be excited by the stories of the love stories between the kids and the horses.
And my books, being a reporter, I struggle with fiction because we're not allowed to make anything up at the New York Times. So I didn't with my children's books, although they're novels. Everything in them is true, including the way the horse flies, and the flying horse is in the belly of a 747. And I actually went with 9 Dutch warm blood horses in the belly of a 747 across the Atlantic to figure out how it was done. I followed, believe it or not, my horse Trendsetter, who the book is about. It's also about a girl named Sarah. Spoiler alert, it's about me. And I followed the stamps in Trendsetter's passport. He actually has a passport. And so I found his history, and I found the town he grew up in. And so every character in all of Once Upon a Horse, this series, is all based on true figures. The only thing sort of from my imagination is the storyline, the through line that puts it all together.
I learned so much from Sarah's book. I learned what is a horse's first day of life like? That was really cool. And then riding on the airplane with the horse. No one ever would know what that feels.
That's amazing.
Now we do.
I love that. I cannot wait to read both of your books. I mean, it's just really fascinating. And the kids, when kids can pick up a book and they can also connect to something that is real, or a hobby or a passion that they have, then just as you both said earlier, that's when we hook our readers, not just the readers who love to read anything they can get their hands on, but especially those who maybe are a little reluctant to read too.
Well, can I elaborate a little further? The second book in my series is called The Jockey and Her Horse, and it comes out in the fall. And it's about the first ever female Black jockey to ride in America. She did it when she was 17 years old in 1971. Her name is Cheryl White, and it's written with her brother. And what was really important to me about that story, Shannon, speaking to exactly what we're talking about seeing themselves and seeing truth, Cheryl White was a real girl, and she's been erased from history. And Black people have been removed from equestrian sport. Really, they're very marginalized and not visible. But the truth is, 1 in 4 cowboys in the pioneer era were Black. The West was integrated. Thoroughbred racing was entirely predicated on enslaved Black labor, and that has been removed from the narrative. My goal in these true books is to gently remind people that those parts of history exist, and also to show people, my hope is a little Black girl picks up that book and she doesn't see herself in the riding arena, and suddenly she realizes she was always there. So that representation really matters. And even with the protagonist of The Flying Horse, Sarah, she struggles with dyslexia. And I really struggled in school. She has sort of an amplification of what I had. And I had a little girl after my latest barn party. I don't know if I told you this, Carrie. She's so special. Her mother, she's dyslexic, 9 years old. Her mother texted me. She said, Mom, I didn't think I would ever be able to read. Now I know I will one day. I mean, that's why you write, right? For a child to see themselves there. It was unbelievable.
Say your books, like Sarah, both your books, the more adult one, Horse Crazy, and then The Flying Horse, they remind me so much of when I was little, and the canon that everyone read was Misty of Chincoteague by Marguerite Henry. And I dreamed of going to the Chincoteague Islands I thought that's how I'm going to get my pony. And I would just, I'd tell my parents, I'm going to go there. And I had it all plotted out, when I was 9 years old, how I was going to get that pony there. And then I went there when I was living in a program in Washington, D.C. for college. And one weekend I went down to the Chincoteague Islands because still at 20 years of age, I still was obsessed with, I need to go there. And your book with the Lipizzan horses, I was fortunate enough, I've been to see the Lipizzan horses in Austria, and that's a thing that you're going to create a generation of little girls that are going to want to go and see the flying horses and that be on their bucket list. And that's also what's so neat about books is they make an imprint on you when you're younger, and it can remain a memory for your whole life of something that you found so magical, like a flying horse. What's a flying horse? I need to see a flying horse. And and I love how you weave all of these facts about the Olympic equestrian and these real people in there for children. And I also loved, Carrie, your footnotes and how you made them fun with the hoof notes and even the little terminology hashtags, because that's something that kids are so familiar with, that maybe, an older generation might not know, but that's something that kids now are very aware of. And so that's another thing that both of your books, I think have that just a real lasting thing for kids to make them what I like to call evergreen books, that they're truly classics. They can be read by any generation and that story is always going to hold up.
I think also what's important about both Carrie and my book is that the protagonists fail a lot. Like Willa's first jump in Horse Girl is by accident, right? Yeah. And you want to tell that story? And so it's not, I think they're inclusive in that way, that you don't have to be good at this. You just have to love it. But maybe you want to talk about that, Carrie.
Yeah, one of my goals was that Willa, my protagonist, makes a lot of mistakes and she's aware of it and kind of owns it. And I thought that would make it so much more relatable to readers. I also wanted humor was very important for me to include in this book. Particularly as a book that is generally geared to girls, although we welcome all readers. Everybody can read this book, all ages, boys, girls, everybody. But girls' books sometimes can be really heavy and serious. And so my editor and I wanted to make sure we embrace the joy and comedy of errors and mistakes and falling on your face and falling in the mud, which is what happens a lot when you're riding horses. And the dirt and the sounds and the stinkiness, that's all a part of it. And that's reality. And we wanted to bring it alive.
I love it. I love everything you guys are talking about. My kids would just be so into this conversation. Like they would be so excited too. I love it.
And Sarah, your protagonist also makes some, has some moments of mistake.
She makes bad decisions, and she's not compassionate to herself. I don't know if my book is particularly humorous, which I love the idea of injecting humor into it, but my book is gentle. And I think that that's what horses are for children. They're a safe space. And, a lot of these books are leaning towards edgy now, and they can be snarky and catty. But my book is gentle, and because that's what horses always were for me. And I think they're that for Dana, right? They create a sanctuary. Maybe you want to talk about that, Dana.
Well, and both of your books have a kindness. I mean, Sarah, your book is if everyone had a teacher like your character Sarah had in her book, or a grandmother Frida. There's I actually cried reading your book because there was just this wonderful kindness. And I think we need a lot more kindness in the world. And also, Carrie, your book too, they're with the family ties and the other kids at the barn and finding that herd. And there also was a kindness. And so I'm very drawn to that. And I think Shannon, librarians often need to have a stable of books like that for kids, because we're living in sometimes a very stressful time for children, and reading books about kids like this, and having kindness is really important. And I know for me at the barn, finding all these new people and having the animals to interact with during the pandemic, was really important, because it was a safe place. Riding at a barn during the pandemic was probably one of the safest places you could be, because you're already socially distanced. And the horses seem to know that all of the people there, these beautiful, majestic animals, which I think that's one of the reasons horse books are so timeless, is because the horses have played this role in what we see and through history of being these just amazing animals. But they almost sensed that all of the people needed them. And I think, your books also show animals like that. And I think that's really important for children too, to learn how to have kindness. So I really love that about both your books. And so thank you for having those in there.
Our kids need books definitely like this. I think that is something. I'm glad that you said that, because we look for books that are kids that do bring kindness and bring that calm and bring something that kids can read, that they're passionate about, that they don't have to, they can see themselves in a book. They don't have to, be someone else or succeed at everything. And I think that is something that I'm excited about bringing them to our library too. You said something too, Dana, that made me think that even though we're not a barn at school, that maybe I need a tiny little barn book nook in my library just to house these books and other favorites about horses too.
And it's very important to it's very important to remember that, and I often say this, that you don't have to have ever touched a horse to be a horse person. Yeah. You don't have to have ever ridden one. Horses are unfortunately incredibly expensive to be engaged with them, and so that can feel exclusionary. But you can have the love in your heart for these animals, and that makes you a certified horse girl or boy. In my first book, Horse Crazy, I actually went to a competition where people compete plastic model horses. They take them around the world, 100 at a time. This is adults and children. And I was stunned by it. Actually came in very, very skeptical, thinking like, what weirdos? And I left realizing I was the weirdo, that I'd lost my ability to play and to imagine and dream. And that those people were playing all day long. And those people who, can afford a $24 acetate model horse are horse people just as much as me with my show jumpers. It's really about feeling it in your heart. And books are incredible ways to get your horse fix when you maybe don't have access to pet a fuzzy nose. I think for the first many decades of my life, horse books were my way I had horses.
That chapter that Sarah's talking about in her Horse Crazy book about going to Briarfest with the model horses is worth buying the book alone. Just that chapter is amazing and awesome. And then I went like 2 years after I read it because I had to see it for myself.
I love that. I can't even wait to read about that. We have a whole garage attic full of those horses from when Brianna my daughter was little. So,
And Shannon, one thing I wanted to say for your librarians listening is it's exactly right. There's so many ways. Even if you're not at a barn or a stable, I've been so wowed by the ingenuity of the librarians that I've worked with over the past 2 years of doing the Horse Girl tour during a pandemic. Some libraries even brought a horse to the lawn of the library so the kids could pet the horse. Others, we just did a Zoom with the author where we made horse crafts, like Horse Girl beaded bracelets, which I'm others, we just talked, or we wrote horse stories together on a Zoom. And so these librarians came up with all these great ideas, and I was the beneficiary of it. So yeah, I think there's just so, as Sarah was saying, there's so many ways to connect to horses through a book without having to spend any money at all.
Yeah, I think some of those visits are even the best, right? And to asking our kids what they want to do too. And that's why I can't wait to go back and bring these books to our library and to talk to our not only horse lovers, but all kids about your books too. It's going to be exciting.
And Shannon, like, I love your idea. I mean, you are in Iowa, and so kids probably, they get to actually see horses depending where they live, or, driving out in the country and seeing the corn. And I've been to that part of the country many times. And that creating something in the library, like a little barn book nook. I mean, we just used an old wooden milk crate that was lying around and in the back of the barn that, had been there for how many years, and painted it. And then I got a little sign made, and I'd be happy to create one and send it to your schools. And
definitely.
Let's do one in every school.
Yes. Yes.
I know.
Just because they are, horse books are universal, and there's a lot of other sports, that kids love, of course, soccer and baseball, but it does talk about how creative librarians are, and I've seen that through my interactions on social media with the librarians, how wonderful they are sharing their creative ideas with one another and adopting those and doing different types of displays to get kids interested in different types of books. And so the Barn Book Nook idea could be replicated, for librarians all across the country.
We're going to do it. We're going to do this, Dana. We can get this done. And I think that is the perfect way to introduce your books, like, to a library, but also just to get kids excited about all reading. But how neat would that be? So yes, Dana, I'd like a sign, and I'll find the crate. We're going to make this happen.
Okay. And then I hope that, when you're sharing the this podcast on your blog, that we can have Carrie and Sarah's pictures of their books, so other librarians can know what great books these are, and that they should put them in their stable of books.
Dana, can we hire you? Can you?
Yeah, are you like, who's paying you, Dana? Seriously.
I am long retired, but this is just a passion. My mom kicked it off here as I'm just showing a photo or a book. This is my mom's copy of Black Beauty that she got when she worked in her first bookshop in Nebraska, and then she passed it to me, and it's a little original edition of Black Beauty. And so books,
that is so cool, Dana.
And if you want to hear the power of horse books, Black Beauty set off the animal rights movement. There was no animal rights movement. There was no humane society. Black Beauty induced it because people saw for the first time through the animal's eyes. And the American Humane Society was actually created to protect carriage horses as it began, and that expanded. So talk about the power of a beautiful book to make people see.
And I loved that in your book, that the story, the chapters that were trendsetter were told through the horse's point of view. And that made it really powerful. It's probably one of the reasons I cried, because I thanks for, pointing that out about Black Beauty, because horse books can, just like you said, have a huge impact on more than just the reader. So
sure.
I love Sarah's in Sarah's book, The Flying Horse, the chapters alternate between the human protagonist point of view and the horse point of view, and it's such a fantastic way to follow the threads of the story as they intertwine. And one of the things I love when I've met with students in library visits and school visits is they want to talk about their own writing and creating their own stories. And they are blown away when I say, I want you to check out one of my chapters in the back. It's only one page. And some chapters are 30 pages. And I said, do you know who told me I could do that? Say no. And I said, I did. I decide. And Sarah got to decide that her horse would tell some chapters and Sarah would tell the other chapters. And I think it's such a great discussion point with students, is that when you're writing, you get to decide how your story is told, and you can be as creative as you want.
So Shannon, I have an idea that, we, of course, Sarah and Carrie don't know this, but for 10 years, I ran a national writing contest for kids through our Mrs. P with teachers all across the country. And Shannon helped us Skype with so many teachers. And Sarah, when I see you in your car there, Shannon would often be in her car setting up tons of teachers for us with poetry days and all kinds of things. But Shannon, maybe what we should do is in just your class, because I know Sarah, you mentioned you might want to do a visit there, or maybe you invite Sarah and Carrie to do a Zoom with your classroom. And, these are things a lot of librarians love to do Zooms with their classrooms. Yeah. But maybe we could do a little writing contest, and then I could provide a copy of each of their books for your library, or to the, as they could win the books for your library.
Let's do it.
Well, I'll expand that, Shannon, to your listeners. I can speak for Carrie on this. We are very available to Zoom all over the country. Yeah. We love donating signed copies. Yeah. We're accessible. My Instagram is Once Upon a Horse. Which is the series title. Carrie, do you want to give your Instagram?
My Instagram is Carrie K. Seim. So that's CarrieKSeim.
And
but
people can
read a lot. If you go to horsegirlbook.com, that's the easier one to remember. Horsegirlbook.com has all the info for me.
Yay.
And people can find us, and we will come chat to your herd.
We're going to make this happen. I'm so excited. And right when we get done, I'm actually going to email all of you, because I have some ideas cooking too. And I know that our listeners will as well. And I will make sure that everything is connected to this podcast, and also do a blog post so all of you listening can not only learn more, but see their books and have everything that they spoke about today attached, so you can take it back to your library. But I'm so grateful that the three of you joined me today. I'm so happy too, just to meet new friends and be connected. So thank you, Dana, for that too.
Well, I want to make one final point just really quick, that Dana doesn't know us. She's our reader, and she read our books, and she found us, and she inspired us. So that is the power of books and the power of readers. So thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. And I'm like the fangirl here. It's like, oh my gosh, I get to meet two authors that I just love. But that's what I love about how authors are on social media. And I think that's a great message for librarians and teachers too, because I know I was like, I know some people know about Mrs. P, mostly teachers and librarians, but I don't think a lot of authors knew about it, because we were mostly reading the classics. And so I took a risk and thought, I'm going to write to these people and see if they write back, and they do. And I think that's that's really, that authors want to engage with librarians and classrooms, and so we don't have to be afraid as readers to reach out. And that was a good lesson for me, because it's really, this is really a thrill for me to actually see you both and get to hear you both. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You're so right. Authors are dying to connect with librarians and talk and share and go to classrooms and meet people. And so it's great when the gates can be down and we can just connect directly. So thank you for your courage, Dana.
I always tell people that, like, don't be afraid. Like, the worst that somebody can say is that they don't have time or that they're busy. But most authors and illustrators and publishers and others want to connect with our kids. So thank you guys so much for not only inspiring me, but also our listeners today. Thank you, Dana, Carrie, and Sarah, for joining me today. We are so inspired by what you shared. You will be able to find their information attached to this podcast, along with resources and a certificate of professional development that you can download and fill out to use. As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our library, schools, and within our lives and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and put it to use within your practice as a future ready librarian. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.